Good morning, everyone. On behalf of FTA Administrator Nuri Fernandez and FTA Deputy Administrator Veronica Vanderpool, I want to welcome you to Region 1's Battery Electric Bus webinar. My name is Pete Butler. I'm the Region 1 Regional Administrator, and I'm very excited that you're able to join us for our third Battery Electric Bus webinar. For today's webinar, we are showcasing the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. The Joint Office was created to assist transit operators as they transition their fleets to battery electric buses. I'm very pleased that we have Jeff Peel and Abby Brown from the Joint Office joining us today. They are here to share with you the types of resources that are available to assist you on your battery electric bus journey. I will now pass it along to our MC, Chris Lamacchia, who will formally introduce Jeff and Abby, as well as guide today's webinar. Again, thank you all for joining us. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Pete. So as Pete mentioned, I'm Chris Lamacchia. We have Jeff Peel, who is the Deployment Manager for the Transit and School Bus Electrification at USDOT. And we have Abby Brown, who is the Transit and School Bus Electrification Technical Assistance Lead at the NREL. Jeff and Abby, let's turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Let me just share my screen here. All right, if I could ask the age-old question at this point, Chris, Abby, can you see my screen here?
Yep.
Apologize, everyone. I have recently just joined the office here, and prior to that, I spent a couple of years in the private sector where we use Zoom and Google, and Teams is this new world to me that everyone else had 3 years of experience in, and I'm catching up quickly. So forgive me for any technical mistakes today, but welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Jeff Peel. I'm joined by my colleague Abby Brown at NREL. I'm here today to talk to you about the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. The Joint Office mission is to accelerate electrified transportation systems that is affordable, convenient, equitable, reliable, and safe. Our vision is really a future where everyone can ride and drive electric. And by ride, we really want to work closely with you all working in the transit space, but also with clean energy school buses, micromobility, mobility as a service. We envision all transportation that is not by foot really having an electric option going forward in the future here. This is also driven a lot by the U.S. National Blueprint for Transportation Decarbonization that came out earlier this year. It's really a landmark strategy for cutting all greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector by 2050. Transit is very much a cornerstone of how we're going to achieve that goal. So as you can see here, the Joint Office supports several programs that were established in the bipartisan infrastructure law. Today, we're really going to focus on what you all are primarily interested in, the Low No Emissions Grant Program for transit administered by our partners here at the FTA. The Low No Emission Grant Program for transit provides $5.5 billion in support of low and no emissions transit bus deployments. And if we have reaction, can I just get a show of hands here popping up on the screen? Who all is familiar with that program? Who all has applied for that program? Let's make sure this isn't news to anyone. I hope at this point, and then the Low No program, it's not. Relatedly, for those of you who work closely with your partners in school bus programs, we have Clean School Bus money out there, $5 billion in support electric school bus deployment. So if you have partners there that working with local Department of Education, State Department of Education who are not familiar with that, please send them our way. We want to electrify their transportation as well. We're really excited to build an extensive history and clean transit bus technical assistance that's been out there for a few years. Transit's really been leading the way, and transportation electrification for a few years. We want to build on that technical assistance through our transit vehicle technical assistance concierge service that we have provided through the Joint Office and again, our partners at FTA. We've been working very hard to develop what is now our rideelectric.gov website. We've had Drive Electric for some time, but we've been really bolstering our resources with much more resources to come to help guide you through answer your questions regarding regardless of where you are in your fleet transition work. The transit agencies that are currently receiving FTA funds or are planning to apply for future funds or are eligible to receive our technical assistance. So again, really wherever you are in that process, whether you're just starting or you're receiving buses and you're looking at how to set up your depots and your routing networks, we're here to support that effort. Much of this work is really being supported by our partners at the National Renewable Energy Lab, NREL. With that, I'll turn it over to Abby Brown, who can tell you more about the rich history that they have in supporting clean transportation and how they are supporting our joint office, FTA, and transit providers like yourself. Abby?
All right, thanks, Jeff. And just to clarify for everybody, the Joint Office was directed through the bill to provide this technical assistance for this program. And so that's kind of why we're here today. And as Jeff mentioned, we do have a technical assistance concierge service, we're calling it. We're the front door for anything related to technical needs that you all have. And I just wanted to give a little bit of kind of framing to why we're here and why we're qualified to be doing that. So NREL has been providing technical assistance for the Department of Energy through the Clean Cities program and other technical assistance programs for over 30 years. We have provided technical support, including on data and tools and resources. And our technical team is composed of industry experts that have been providing answers to technical questions about alternative fuels for years, including for technical problem solving to overcome obstacles. And so, as Jeff mentioned, that technical assistance that we're providing here through the Joint Office is really an extension of that work that we've been doing for so long. Next slide. So before I dive into the technical assistance that the Joint Office at NREL are providing, just wanted to frame the discussion a bit with a little bit more background on our history in clean bus technical assistance. So we have almost 2 decades of experience providing assistance for clean transit and school buses. And our unique piece here is that not only are we proactively providing resources and planning based on the things that we anticipate that fleets are needing, but also really good at providing that reactive assistance when an issue arises with a fleet. We really understand that hands-on assistance that's unique to each transit agency or school bus fleet is a key part of what's needed with the clean bus technical assistance. Next slide. So examples of how we can help. Just wanted to give a little bit of information here on things that we could help with. The bottom line with this, though, is that really it's pretty wide-ranging and pretty broad as far as the things that we can help you all with. But these are some of the things that have come up in the past. And I won't go through each of these pieces individually, but I'll kind of give you a moment to digest it, and we'll talk about it more in the Q&A and discussion later as far as things that you're hearing and things that you need help with. But these are some of the things that we have helped with in the past and are prepared to help with for future. Next slide. So wanted to just give a little bit of information on sort of the trending topics that we're hearing right now. And this probably isn't any shock to any of you, but a lot of the things that we hear lately are things like charging infrastructure needs. How do I determine what infrastructure I need for my buses and my specific routes? And related to that, route analysis, how to determine what buses will meet the needs of my routes. Working with electric utilities, so helping folks get in touch with their utility, helping to plan for utility infrastructure upgrades. relevant right now. Obviously, cold weather concerns and considerations, how to plan for that with your fleet, and then also how to plan for 100% electric fleet. So these are just some of the trending topics we're hearing. Definitely not meant to be all inclusive, but just wanted to kind of give you a sense of the things that we're currently helping a lot on. Next slide. So if you want to reach out to us, just, Jeff already mentioned our rideelectric.gov. That's our new website. You can go there and find the contact form. But there's also an email address that we'll share at the end. But the key part here is that anyone who is planning to apply for Lono or is already receiving Lono funds or has received funds in any of the past rounds does qualify for this free technical assistance to the Joint Office. If you have a very general question, you can reach out and our team will get back to you within 48 hours. If it's more of a hands-on thing, like we're really having issues with our infrastructure or, whatever it is, we'll schedule a follow-up discussion with some of our subject matter experts. And, we'll take it through the whole process of trying to solve this, whatever the issue is. It could even involve a site visit at some point if needed. So really wide ranging as far as the things that we can help with. And you can reach out to us through here or through our email addresses that we'll share a little bit later. Next slide. So just wanted to highlight just one example of an in-depth technical assistance that we've done. So obviously, I think everyone's familiar with the New York MTA, obviously one of the biggest transit agencies in the country. But MTA requested assistance with planning for a 100% electric bus fleet, specifically help utilizing existing planning tools for estimating electric bus energy needs and grid impacts. Also prioritizing depot locations for solar and energy storage projects, and of course, advice on extreme weather concerns with their bus depots. And for them in particular, it was hot weather concerns with their fleet depots and how that might affect their charging infrastructure. So our team used some of our program, EVI Edges and EVI OnSuite. Those are some analysis tools that NREL has. And we utilize those to provide MTA with optimal batteries and solar design, as well as a life cycle cost and resilience analysis for one of their major bus depots. And we do plan to publish our findings in the near future. We're just wrapping this one up. This was our very first technical assistance, in-depth technical assistance inquiry that we worked on. So we are going to be publishing those findings very soon. But if you're interested in more information, of course, you can reach out to us and we'd be happy to give you more at any time. Next slide. And I'll turn it back over to Jeff, but I also just wanted to say really quickly that MTA is an instance of a reactive assistance, right, where they came to us and had a question and we responded. We also have a lot of really great tools and resources on rideelectric.gov and have been creating more tools based on what I had mentioned about anticipated needs of the fleets. So the great thing is that even though we're getting a lot of questions, because we've been kind of making these new tools and resources, we are able to respond quickly when there are new questions that arise. So just wanted to flag that as well. But I'll turn it over to you, Jeff.
Yeah. Thanks, Abby. Yeah, and just a reminder to everyone, regardless of where you are in your process here in your electrification of your fleet, we're here to support you, as we'll reiterate over and over again. But as Abby said, we are continuing to improve our offerings in terms of our technical assistance. Right now, we're in the process of developing a needs assessment to help focus those efforts where they are most impactful. So if you want to participate in some short focus interviews with some of your team members there who are working on this transition for your fleets, reach out to me. My email will be on the next slide. We want to be able to talk to you and find out where everyone is so we can help hone in where we need to focus the materials we're providing. With that, our hope really was sort of twofold today, at least where we sit here in the Joint Office. One, just to let you know that we exist and we're here as a technical assistance resource for you as needed, but also we want to just open this up to discussion, and Chris is going to, I think, help facilitate this here to find out where people are in their process, what technical assistance needs you have, what technical questions you might have. And I'll preface it with Abby and I have some assistance we can provide here in real time, but as you all know, this gets pretty detailed very quickly. So we may just drop some resources and links in the chat to answer your question, and we'll follow back up with those of you who ask to make sure that you get the help and resources you need going forward. Chris?
Sure, thanks. For people that have any questions, please raise your hand and we will take you off mute or use the chat box. We'll be monitoring that. So I'll give it a second for any questions from any attendees. Right, can you take Graham Curtis off mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yep.
There you go, Graham.
Okay, great. I had to unmute to mute a couple times. Thank you. Thank you. Very exciting. Looking forward to working with everyone. One thing we're Connecticut. I'm responsible for the Connecticut electrification program, which we're moving forward rapidly with the BEB. One thing we're trying to figure out now is the paratransit vehicles, because we have a facility we're going to be a long plant facility that's going to be electrified, and we're wrestling with what that looks like because of some of the duty cycle issues, the availability of vehicles, the type of vehicles. I'm trying to reach out to maybe the private side that has some experience on the vans. We're going to get our first 10 vans next month, so we're very excited about getting our hands on the vans. But we're kind of it's a position we have to start designing a facility that's we provided for 100% electrification, but we know we're going to be moving into it as a mixed fleet. So that's kind of an area where we look forward to getting some maybe national perspective. Maybe on the West Coast, some people are a little farther ahead with the vans and things like that. But that's an area we could use some assistance on.
Yeah, that's great.
Sorry, go ahead, Abby.
No, I just wanted to say that that's a really interesting thing that you're looking into, and I'm sure we can find you some case studies and things like that, like you mentioned on the West Coast, of what others have done, and be happy to look into that further for you. Jeff, did you have something else to add?
No, just that I'm excited to hear that's also part of your fleet transition plan. That's one of the things I wanted to make sure that we, as a joint office, are also helping provide resources for. 3 weeks in, I must admit I'm not sure what we have at our fingertips right now, but we'll, like Abby said, we'll find what's out there and best practices and case studies and send it your way.
Right, because some of our providers are 100% dedicated paratransit, and some are mixed, and some of our small rurals have a mix. So it's something we need to kind of figure out as we're transitioning for them,
Right.
And some of the rural ones have duty cycles that are upwards of over 400 miles a day. So the duty cycles for the existing vehicles don't work. So they're gonna have to maybe revisit and rethink their service on the paratransit side in these rural areas. So
Right.
It's a good question. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more raised hands? Adams, I think you're the next one up. You should get muted.
A big topic of conversation amongst operators in Vermont has been fire suppression systems for our facilities, and just looking for guidance on what is recommended as we introduce more battery electric buses into our depots. Do you have anything that you can share on that topic?
Yes,
Sure.
we do.
Real quick,
do you want to
Adams-
go ahead, Jeff?
Oh no, I was just going to say, if you just so that we can follow up with the full list of information here. What was your full name and which agency, so we can find you later here?
Sure. My name is Adams Carroll. I'm with Advanced Transit. We are operating in New Hampshire and Vermont. Our facility is located in Vermont.
Great, thanks. Abby, if you want to give a verbal response, I'll bring up some resources to drop in the chat here.
Okay, great. So as far as facility design for battery fires, that's something that we are currently working on some more guidance around because, as you mentioned, it's a really hot topic. We do have a lot of resources currently on fire safety training, especially for first responders on the ground, folks that are dealing with the electric buses and potential fires. We have some resources that Jeff will probably be throwing into the chat here in a second. But I would say if you're looking for specific facility considerations, that's something that we're working on guidance on and can provide you some more information and resources on. Those are currently getting developed. So we'll follow back up with you, Adams, on those specific new resources. But Jeff will throw some information in the chat on what we've got existing for fire first responders and how to deal with the battery electric bus fires.
Okay, great, thank you. And just to confirm, would enhanced fire suppression systems would that be eligible for low-no grant if it was to support electrification of a fleet?
That is a great question, and maybe more of a programmatic question that I won't be able to answer. But maybe Chris has some thoughts or others.
Adams, we can follow up with you on the specifics of eligibility under low-no for fire suppression systems.
Thank you.
Great question, though. We have a question in the chat from Deborah Shores. Would there be an opportunity to get information about opportunities to procure ZEVs, especially piggyback procurements?
Yes, I think we could help you with that, Deborah. If you want to reach out through the concierge line, which I realize we haven't put up that email address up yet, but we will. Or maybe we'll just throw it in the chat here in a second. But if you want to reach out to us, we can have a follow-up conversation with you offline on how we can help there.
Great. Doug Holcomb, up next.
Hey, thanks. I joined a little bit late. I had trouble with the link, but on the and I apologize if you covered this, but I wanted to talk just a little bit about FTA's guidance on spare ratios. We've been operating zero emission buses for a while now. 8% of the fleet are Proterras, 440 kilowatts and 675 kilowatt buses. We've built a supplemental fire suppression system in our garage, but just recently a number of things led me to think that the current spare ratio guidance from FTA could end up being a barrier to a transition during the next 10 to 12 years. Because if you think about what happens after a fire, at least here in Connecticut, it sidelined 11 other buses for a year as the NTSB tried to research that. And if you couple that with another initiative that FTA is undertaking, which is trying to understand why there's a great scarcity of manufacturers of buses in the country, only 2, maybe 3 now, 1 in bankruptcy, well, then that's difficult. That's going to cause a difficult time. There's some 80,000 city buses in the country, all of which have to be replaced in the next 12 to 15 years, I suspect. So I know it's historically what we've done, but it would seem to me if transit agencies that were hesitant to transition their fleet because of the importance of making pull-out to them and their concern about energy availability and a catastrophic fire, that allowing considerable latitude for the contingency fleets and the spare ratio would give some relief that if something happened 1 or 5 or 9 years into the transition, then we'd still be able to make pull-out. Because in the end, that's the most important thing. Thanks.
I think Alex just put in the chat some updated guidance on spare ratios. If that's not the updated one, I believe we have some updated stuff that's coming down the pipeline. So more to follow on updated spare ratios and contingency fleet guidance as it relates to BEV transition.
Thank you.
And Chris, if I could just, great question. We certainly don't want the spare ratio to be a barrier for folks transitioning. We will certainly work with everyone, you know, to help. We in this matter, we understand, you know, just the challenges in working through this new technology. Alex?
Yeah, so they did just very quietly publish these new FAQs, Doug. So I just posted in chat. So there's a couple in there. One I'll just highlight. An FAQ being, what if a change in propulsion type means a recipient needs more vehicles? The answer they have is, if a recipient replaces its rolling stock with rolling stock of a new propulsion type, then the spare ratio is calculated off the needs of the new fleet. For example, if a recipient was previously operating 100 buses in maximum fixed route service, FTA spare ratio would expect 20 spares for a total of 120 buses. But if now the recipient needs 110 buses operating in the maximum fixed route service, the spare ratio would go higher, allow up to 22 spares. So there's more flexibilities now with these FAQs, and then there's other flexibilities that we can work on with a case-by-case basis with spare ratio deviations. But with that, you'll want to email the FTA Region 1 office, and we will work to find a good solution with you.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Next question is from Berkshire RTA. What is the process for looking for a zero emission facility?
Yeah, and I guess a clarifying question there is, if are you looking for guidance on zero emission facility design? If that's the case, we can help you with that. If you want to reach out, we can kind of walk you through your specific site. And you can reach out on the email address here on the screen. Did you have anything else to add there, Jeff?
No, I would, that's one of those that falls in the very technical long answers. Do reach out. We'll put the right expert in touch with you.
Yep.
Thank you. Next hand is Lindsay Heffernan.
Hi there. I'm Lindsay Heffernan. I'm from the MBTA, and thanks so much for putting this together. One really simple one. A bunch of us had a hard time joining this, so will you send out the slides to those who registered, possibly? Because I'm a little behind, but I'll share what I know is a challenge of ours more globally, and it is thinking about the relationship, particularly between the transit provider and the utilities more globally. We're moving all, obviously battery electric gets a huge draw on the grid. And so how are we good partners? If there's models out there for good practices from other parts of the country that have done that well, we'd certainly welcome that. If I can't imagine we're the first to tackle it, but if we are, that's good to know too, to just think about, how we sort of manage those relationships. Regionally is something that we're definitely struggling with and then working on. And as I joined, I did hear folks talking about electric vehicles and paratransit. That's certainly something we're thinking a lot about as well. We have a lot of attention in the state of Massachusetts around our buses, but we're thinking about our non-revenue fleet and our paratransit fleet in addition, and which frankly draws even more from the grid. And so we are just like how to kind of manage that pace of change, and having a reliable system to lean on is obviously a huge concern.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great question. No, you were not alone in doing that. The first piece of advice is engage early and often with your utility, and I'll drop some links and some bullet point best practices there. But if you have specific questions in there, if you need us to participate in the conversation there with the utility, do reach out to the emails you see on your screen right now, and we'll support you in that.
Great, thank you.
In terms of the presentation, yes, we'll be sending out the slides as well as a recording of the presentation to everyone afterwards. That will be coming from Pete. Right. Any more hands or questions in the chat? Here's one. What are some of the common roadblocks you see as people begin to transition to BEVs?
Sure. Do you want to take that, Jeff? You want me to take it?
No, why don't you go ahead and grab that one? Sorry, I'm
Okay.
having technical difficulties. My screen's freezing here. Go ahead.
Okay, no worries, that's fine. So some of the things that we see commonly are, of course, the purchase price right now of battery electric buses, but that's why FTA Lono is here to help. And then also with the charging infrastructure, like I mentioned, trying to figure out that right mix of infrastructure, working with a utility as Lindsay just mentioned, those are some of the very early roadblocks, which is, getting that utility infrastructure set up and the charging infrastructure. But that's also something we can help with. And then, like I mentioned earlier on the trending topics, planning and route analysis, like how do we figure out which electric buses are going to work on which routes? And then obviously coupling that with the charging infrastructure, and potentially range anxiety piece, right? With making sure that the buses will meet the needs of your routes on the charge that they have capable. So those are some of the common things that we hear as far as challenges and just early concerns on transitioning to battery electric buses. But we do have a number of resources that can help answer those questions. And if you have specific questions on your individual scenarios, reach out and we can help kind of talk through it with you, and plan for what that might look like for you.
And with that, I think, Abby covered one of the things that I've heard the most prior to joining the team, and I've heard bubble up a few times since with the range anxiety. And I'm curious, again, use the React feature here and Teams. How many of you are integrating your battery electric bus and your zero emission bus fleet planning tools in with any network redesigns, with any scheduling software, with overarching network and scheduling planning efforts that you're doing? I think it's a wonderful time to sort of open up the books, if you will, and sort of revisit both with this new technology and new infrastructure needs that are coming in. I'm not seeing any reactions. But with that, I would say that is a wonderful time to just sort of take a look at your network and how you operate your revenue service there as a whole in relation to this new integration of the technology.
And I'm putting a link in the chat with a guidebook that NREL published with USAID a couple of years ago that might be interesting for folks.
All right, go back to Graham Curtis. We'll do a chat question.
Yeah, so just relative to the question of what we're doing with our route. So, as we're getting to 15 or 20% of the fleet, we're able to work at our existing blocks. As we go beyond that, we're going to have to revisit a lot of our blocks, but the uncertainty is the range, the improvement in battery density and range that that comes into play that overlaps that. We had been very optimistic that was going to continue to improve at a 5% a year. Recently, we've seen kind of a plateauing of that, and I don't know, because of the loss of players in the marketplace, there'll be less of that being driven forward. But we're trying to balance how much en-route charging we need to potential out there, and simultaneously we were kind of leaning towards a more of a depot model, but that the loss of a potential loss of Proterra, who was kind of, in my opinion, driving some of the range things, is a loss for the industry.
Yeah, I think I agreed. I think that the more the marketplace is open to greater competition, that drives innovation and better quality products for you all. So that is something the office and the administration is paying obviously close attention to. Graham, I may follow up with you after this to discuss how you were handling that on route charging assessment there, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, we have about 5 more minutes. Any more questions? Please feel free to either use the chat box or raise your hand, and we will take you off mute. All right, Laura Gilmore. Should be good.
Hi there. I have one other question from the MBTA, which is about the connection between electrifying our fleets and planning for storm response. Are there any best practices around how to think about our storm response planning in light of fleet electrification? I know a question that often comes up is, if, as we are thinking about electrifying particularly our bus fleets, but our fleets overall, how should we best be planning for major storm events that might impact power supply?
Yep, that's a great question, and it's something that we've thought quite a bit about at NREL. So you want to reach out, we can give you some more resources. I believe there's a report that we published a year or two ago, so I'll need to look that up. But we do have some thoughts there on resiliency and things to be thinking through when you're electrifying. So we can provide you guys with some guidance.
And this harkens back to the earlier question about engaging your utility provider. That's should be part and parcel of that conversation you're having with them as well.
Doug, you are off mute.
There you go. Can you hear me? Just a follow-up. I just want to share kind of a philosophy and an approach that we're taking here as a follow-up to the question from the T. And we are concerned, like everybody else, about making pullout and about the resilience of the service against 2 different things. One is the availability of energy or the lack of energy, either from a storm or an accident or a transformer failure or something like that. And the other is the loss of a large part of the fleet stored together because of a catastrophic fire. And we've heard people say that the electric bus fires are, no more common than a diesel fire, but the diesel buses, the MRECs and fog maker systems can put those fires out generally on their own. But if you have a catastrophic fire in a large garage, you have a much bigger problem. And I know there's modeling that's been done and everybody's looking at this, but the approach that we're taking now is the separation of the fleet. The traditional way of storing all of them like sardines in a big can lined up with just barely enough space for an operator to get to the bus, I think in the transition to electric buses, that's got to be a thing of the past. And if you separate facilities and separate the fleet, in our case, we're thinking 3 separate facilities, one master facility and 2 charging facilities, and you have, say, a 33% spare ratio, then if any one of those facilities went down, the other 2 could make the pull-out for the region. So that's just kind of a transitional approach. And I think in the next couple of years, battery technology will improve, ranges will improve, the anxiety about range will improve, but the possibility of the loss of a large part of the fleet is just not something that we can abide. So and that's why we're thinking multiple facilities, separation of the fleet. It's possible that power goes out in one and not the other 2, that kind of thing. And if there's the possibility of a catastrophic fire that closes the shop for a period of time, the other 2 could pick that up. Just kind of our feelings these days.
Thanks for sharing, Doug. Remind me, I'm sorry, what provider are you with?
We're Greater Bridgeport Transit.
Greater Bridgeport. Okay, got it. Thanks for sharing.
All right. We have time for one more question or open discussion item from anyone. See nothing in the chat. I see no hands, but we do have one final question in terms of cold weather. New England does get cold in the wintertime, especially the further north you go. Have you seen some best practices that you can share from other cold weather states to maximize their BEV fleets during the winter?
Yeah, we
Yes.
have, and I'll drop some links here in the chat because I know that is a central concern for folks in New England here.
Yeah, we do have, we've been thinking a lot about this recently on the school bus side. And we have a new help sheet that we put out just a couple of weeks ago that talks about best practices and things to be considering when you're utilizing electric buses in cold weather climates. Obviously, a lot of the things applicable to school buses are also applicable to transit fleets. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you. And then there are a number of case studies we can also point folks to if you want to reach out.
Great. Thank you. Last call for any questions. All right, seeing none, just want to thank Abby and Jeff again for taking the time to present this material and have the open discussion. I want to apologize for any link issues that occurred. We will be sending the recording as well as any links that Jeff and Abby posted in with another follow-up to your colleague from Pete. So be on the lookout for that. And thank you all for attending.
Yeah, thanks again. And just one last reminder, make note of the Drive Electric website, of our emails, the need that we're doing a needs assessment here. And if you're willing to participate in a very brief interview, asking you a few questions about where you are in your process and what resources may be of help, do please reach out to me. Doug, the last points you brought up there were great. We'd love to include that in there. So if you don't mind following up with me here, if not, I'll follow up with you. Look forward to hearing from you all in the future.
Great, thank you. And the joint office is there for everyone to use as a resource. Please utilize them. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.